In this video, I'm taking one of the premier decks of Yu-Gi-Oh's GOAT format, converting it into Magic, and seeing how it stacks against its contemporary competition. How did it go? Well, I will reveal one of my foretold cards, Ring of Destruction.
Well, anyway, thanks for the par shaft. I'm gonna...
house, or it's the number of islands.
Oh, it is the number... Oh, wait,
Bozo? Yeah.
I have a Bozo.
No, we're gonna give you a Spirit, but I'm gonna Metamorphosis one of the GOAT tokens into Thousand Eyes.
Okay.
And then we will...
And how does that save you?
Because other creatures can't attack.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that other part of the card.
Yeah, the stupid part. Yeah.
Oh boy, we're gonna do something. We're gonna do something sick here. All right, so I didn't know this would come up. So I will pay this cost by sacking a creature and paying the emerge cost reduced by the creature's mana value. We will tribute summon over Sinister Serpent for Erudite Parshath.
Oh god.
All right, well we're gonna jam the best Magic card, Pot of Greed.
Still really confused as to what that card does.
Yeah, no, it's a mystery. We'll go green, blue, and 1 for Snatch Steal. I will attempt to activate its ability to pay 2 and steal Wong 2. Or not Wong, sorry, the Arc Slogger.
Yeah, that's... yeah... Can I just respond by decking myself?
I mean, if you want to. So you'll get on the Spirit for Tribe Infecting Virus.
Oh, you're gonna make me... Wait. Ah!
Yeah, bro, I mean, it's... So I'm gonna...
What is...
Hey, I have to go low.
You cannot tell me that is fair and balanced for 2005 Magic!
More lopsided than you would think. Admittedly, that could be for a number of reasons, but before we get into those, we need to understand the kind of environment both games were in at this time period. The year is 2005, an era of such exciting media like the Hordika saga of Bionicle, Revenge of the Sith, and everyone's favorite, the Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. In the world of card games, though, it was quite interesting. Yu-Gi-Oh! Had just experienced its first case of degenerate format stateside, and the following ban list would shape the following months into the era of GOAT format. Characterized by the still occasionally played spell card Scapegoat. Up until more recent Konami and content creator initiatives, GOAT was the alternative format for Yu-Gi-Oh! If you weren't enjoying current standard play. Of course, now we have a much wider depth and breadth of historical and alt formats to dive deep into. Edison, Toss, Trinity, Reaper, but GOAT started it all. On the surface, it's the rose-tinted memories of fighting for resources and clawing for every inch of advantage. Admittedly, peeling away that surface and introducing modern deck-building sensibilities wrecks every preconceived notion of that idea. In hindsight, what else do you expect when a legit turn 1 can go Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, Delinquent Duo? But despite all that, you don't get to the renaissance of explorative formats now without starting somewhere, and that somewhere was GOAT format. Coincidentally, in the world of Magic, the game would also slip into a case of degenerate formats around this time, characterized by Skull Clamp and the other powerful artifacts introduced in the Mirrodin block, before banning Skull Clamp in June of 2004 helped calm down the highly aggressive metagame. The artifact affinity decks that spawned in this period would only continue to persist into other formats, most notably in the commons-only Pauper format. But frankly, the next year or so was quiet on the Magic front, mostly due to a concerted effort from play design to dial back some of the power level and instead focus more on flavor with the beginning of the Kamigawa block, the poster child for how Cyberpunk can improve everyone's opinion of you. As for the conversion, this gave an interesting look into some things I didn't get a chance to cover in the 6 Sam episode, primarily fusion monsters, flip monsters, and trap cards. Converting Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap cards into Magic cards were highly benefited from the release of Kaldheim's Foretell mechanic, though the idea in that set was to pay a small cost now for nothing just to spring a more powerful effect later on. Unfortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't have you pay to set cards, so we have two options here. Keep the Magic implementation, or mimic it to more how traps work in Yu-Gi-Oh! Should we choose the latter, we need to make a stronger Foretell, something that lets us set them for free. So let's just call it, Prediction. Functionally, it's the same as Foretell, but we don't have to pay 2 to set the card. But this idea is something we'll come back to post-testing. The big design issue is making it so traps still feel flavorful, meaning we can't actually cast the traps from hand. Luckily, we have a route for that, which is simply make it so that they can only be cast from exile. This cast from exile approach does complicate some things later on though, as we'll see. This general functioning for the traps also extends to some of the quick play spells in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which here have been converted into just instants with a Foretell cost. The other side too is how to interact with the cards in the back row. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has them physically in play, but Magic has foretold cards out of the way in exile. While you could make a mechanic of like, You put this face down into play as a permanent and cast it later, a la Spellmorph from Mystery Boosters. I didn't want to further pile complexity into this, so I went the route of letting you put a card from exile into the graveyard. I believe with how the rules interact, you should be able to respond to the targeting of your face down card, similarly in Yu-Gi-Oh where you can chain a back row card that's about to be destroyed. But with those in mind, the traps were all pretty nice conversions from Yu-Gi-Oh. The weirdest part was making sure the removal moved stuff back into the graveyard, like with Dust Tornado. Some of them did get a little wacky though. Sakuretsu and Mirror Force used to include a clause for activating only after declare blockers, but I realized the function was almost identical to name any white combat trick that destroys attacking creatures, so I just changed it to be worded like those. Call of the Haunted was a pretty funny one, since I realized with the way it interacts, it's functionally the same as Animate Dead, but can be cast at flash speed from exile. So outside of the trap-specific text, I basically just copied Animate's text wholesale. Fusion was its own nasty little beast, but unlike the last time, I decided to have the Fusion monsters work from the sideboard. I reasoned that it would be simpler to not have to worry about explicit mana cost or castability if you just make it so they can only be brought in through Fusion cards or something like Metamorphosis. On the surface, it's a pretty simple mechanic. You merge two named cards together into a different creature. Hell, it's even simpler with Metamorphosis. Trying to shove that into Magic mechanics was a little heinous, I'm not gonna lie, but I think it gets the job done without being an egregious rules nightmare. Most of the common GOAT format fusion monsters are actually pretty easy to shift over into Magic. Ryusenshi was a pretty nice conversion, though the second ability to counter target instant is probably a little too powerful when brought over from Yu-Gi-Oh. Given that in this context, it's a small amount of life to shut down a game-ending spell. Dark Balter had a similar case, especially with the second effect interacting with Morph abilities. Thousand Eyes I think is the only egregious one I had to make changes to. GOAT format's most defining aspect is using Metamorphosis to transform a GOAT token into this guy. It works in Yu-Gi-Oh because both the token and Thousand Eyes are level 1. Problem is tokens in Magic don't have a mana cost, so therefore, for the same interaction to be present in Magic, we need Thousand Eyes to not have a mana cost. What is kind of funny though is that you could use Metamorphosis on a morphed creature to go into Thousand Eyes, since the morph has a mana cost of 0. Gatling Dragon was a pretty quick and easy conversion as well, though the fact that I wanted it for the investment to activate the destruction effect ASAP made me hem and haw over whether Metamorphosis should give haste. Ultimately, for flavor, I decided to do so. My idea was in the world of Magic 4 mana for swapping to a fusion creature was already a steep enough cost, so giving it haste wasn't the worst thing in the world. We'll see how that goes. St. Joan is functionally a vanilla, and Darkblade's fusion was a pretty cut and dry conversion as well. Flip monsters I thought would be very easy to convert, but in reality they weren't nearly as nice as I thought they'd be. Going into this, I thought they could work just like morph creatures, and this worked for the most part. Gameplay though creates an entirely different spectrum. Rather than in Yu-Gi-Oh where the onus is on the attacker needing to swing into the flip monster and get a jump scare, in Magic the onus is on the defender for whether they want to hold up mana to pay the morph cost or not. And frankly it gets weirder since morph isn't something you can actually respond to, it just happens because it's categorized as a special action. This makes the interactions and therefore the text of Blade Knight and Mystic Swordsman just a little more weird. In Yu-Gi-Oh they don't allow flip effects to activate, but there's not a precedent for this kind of anti-morph tech in Magic. So I just made their effects worded so that you can't activate morph abilities when they attack, or in Mystic Swordsman's case, when they battle. The other hump to get over was whether or not to keep morph as is or change the cost to some degree to mimic Yu-Gi-Oh more. The reasoning being that since flip monsters can only activate during combat, and if we wanted to make the through line between games tighter, we could make so they could only morph during combat. A la Megamorph adding counters, we could call this one Battle Morph or something where it can only be flipped during combat, but in exchange for inflexibility, the cost is cheaper. Much like fusions and traps, transplanting the actual mechanics into Magic was a pretty quick job. The vast majority of them were pretty straightforward and didn't have much mangling to do to work within Magic's ecosystem. So with all those design explanations out of the way, let's get into trying to play some games with this. Keep in mind the heyday of GOAT format was the summer of 05, this puts us right after the release of 9th edition, which is an unfortunate shame because if GOAT format went past October, I could be able to justify including the first shock lands from original Guilds of Ravnica. Unfortunately, GOAT format technically ended October 1st of that year, so we're out of luck. We'll have to make do with the Pain lands and the legendary lands from the first two Kamigawa sets for colors. Unfortunately, the next best bet for color fixing that doesn't hurt us are the dual lands from Champions that if you use them, don't untap during your next untap step. We could potentially justify the Tron lands to help us make absurd mana to foretell a bunch of traps or morph a bunch of guys. Also, potentially detrimental is the lack of life gain this deck has. As much as life is a resource, having 8,000 of it definitely feels a little more forgiving than just 20, especially if we need the colored mana. So what's the metagame we'll have to contend with? At this time, the top decks were Tooth and Nail, different variations of Red Aggro, Gifts Ungiven, White Weenie, an artifact blue deck named Bluetooth, god, Magic deck names are great, and mono green Aggro. But How do they work? Tooth and Nail's game plan is, well, playing Tooth and Nail. With the Tron lands and a number of ramp sources, you ramp to 9 mana, cast Entwine Tooth and Nail, and tutor up some amount of pieces to slam for massive damage. Usually Kiki Jiki and Sundering Titan, but you could always grab Darksteel Colossus and Triskelion. The deck also gets to have land ramp that Stone Rains for some reason by entwining Reap and Sow, allowing you to stay ahead on mana. Red Aggro had a couple variants at this time, primarily the usual red deck wins Rush and Ponza. Both have the same game plan, rush you down to various degrees. Ponza's variant focused a little more on disrupting your mana so that you would be stuck behind the red deck, unable to mount a defense. The decks would usually end on Arcslogger, where at that point you could dump the rest of your mana and deck into repeated face damage. Gifts Ungiven was a complex combo deck that used the aforementioned gifts to help generate card advantage while filling the graveyard with reanimation targets. You could bring back haymakers like Kakusho for life gain, Kagamaru for a giant boy, Myojo Knight's Reach to rip hands apart, or Sito Moloku to keep a full hand and a full board of illusion. White Weenie is the white aggro list of choice, a bunch of anthems and small guys to push for damage quickly. While it doesn't have the direct damage of red aggro, it's instead able to play more prohibitive tools. Pale Curtain to shut down graveyard strategies like the aforementioned Gifts Ungiven, 8.5 Tails to provide protection, and Hikori to absolutely hose decks that need big mana. Bluetooth is the blue artifact-based control strategy, abusing counter spells before sitting on a Memnar to turn permanents into artifacts and start taking control of them. Or it could just take control of creatures through Vidalcan Shackles, or take control of entire turns using Mindslaver. Finally, green aggro takes an interesting place in the metagame as the Gigabrain meta pick versus Tooth and Nail. It plays a variety of creatures with Forest Walk to get in past blockers, and a variety of instants and enchantments to grow their creatures to massive size to lay the smackdown early and often. So we'll throw our GOAT deck into the fray against the Wheel of Contenders and see how it fares. Honestly, my money is maybe having some teeth against control, but otherwise I feel like we're going to be at a massive disadvantage against the aggro decks unless we can consistently see combat tricks like Mirror Force and Sakuretsu Armor. I'm going to be cheating a little bit here and basically include the extra deck as a second sideboard. Functionally, it's just all Metamorphosis targets, but should we get to sideboarding, we'll be pulling from this sideboard here the actual main deck cards. So here's the list. In the transition to Magic, I've cut down on a few of the spell trap removal cards to help make the land ratio a little less suspect. 20 lands, even for the relatively low mana curve of the deck, seemed like a bit of cope for this first experiment testing out using Wholesale Foretell. The mana base is functionally based in Sultai, and with 4 Forbidden Orchards, we can ideally not stress too heavily about a lack of specific colors. Though giving our opponent bodies isn't helping the lack of life gain issue. The challenge for us will be living long enough between our opponents and the litany of pain lands to get to a late game where Blackluster Soldier can neutralize threat and swing in for massive damage. In a absolute worst case scenario, Aeronite Parshath and the card advantage he brings might be enough. What is kind of nice is that there is a life gain land in standard at this time, but being legendary means we can only have one copy of it in our deck. And in a format rife with viable land destruction decks, this is basically a band-aid for the massive flesh wound issue we have. Let's go see how those games played out. Versus Tooth and Nail. In this game 1, I keep an opener of some lands, Book of Moon and Scapegoat for protection, and Tsukiyomi as a body. By turn 2, we see Magical Merchant. And by turn 4, seeing my reanimate in the form of Premature Burial means if we mill a good creature off of this merchant, we're in business. So during Adam's end step, I just decide to let it rip. In your end step, actually, I'm going to pay a green, taking 1, to flip my Magical Merchant. When he's turned face up, I get to reveal cards from my library until I reveal a non-creature. I will put the non-creature revealed to my hand, and the rest go to my graveyard. Aeronite Parshath. Underground Sea. Okay. Or not Underground Sea, Underground River. We'll get the Underground River and bin the Parshath. Oh, I guess. And Parshath is a pretty good reanimate target. Despite that bringing it back eats into a quarter of my life total, we bring him back and start presenting a feasible clock. Parshath helps keep the cards flowing and gets backed up by the Ring of Destruction we find next turn. It's a magical tool that'll help us later to deal with some of the bigger threats Tooth and Nail has, like one particular Titan that comes down out of nowhere. I think, we might still have a shot, boys.
Yeah, you may, depending on what's in that hand and has been foretold. I'm gonna cast Sundering Titan.
Oh, that's spooky. Okay. So I'm gonna have some responses here. Well, I guess the cast is fine. I don't have a response on the cast. Yes.
Well, I have to choose a forest, and unfortunately mine is the only one. Island and swamp.
Okay. I will float the blue, float a green, taking 1, have the colorless. I'm going to cast Scapegoat from my hand to make 4 0/1 green sheep creature tokens. I guess still on the targeting of Sundering Titan for the abilities, I will reveal one of my foretold cards, Ring of Destruction. I get to destroy target creature, then we both take damage equal to its power. So I will target Titan and we'll both take 7. And with that Ring of Destruction, the pressure and card advantage from Parshath, and thankfully dodging a good top deck off the Divining Top, Goat Control takes game 1. Going into game 2, I sideboard in the creature swaps to make it potentially easier to get Adam's better creatures, and Bottomless Trap Hole to make it harder for Adam to get an immediate win through Tooth and Nail. The start of this game is fine after a mulligan to 6, especially given an opening hand with Pot of Greed. Giving Adam an army with my Forbidden Orchard to push our board size in a tepid game state isn't really helping us though. He puts down an Oblivion Stone to potentially scare me out from building a board, but I'm not scared by that, eventually forcing him to crack it. What I am scared of though is him getting to resolve the namesake of his deck.
Alright, now let's see if there's any counter magic in that Yu-Gi-Oh deck of yours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Tooth and Nail?
Tooth and Nail. They're also nailing.
Yep, no, it resolves.
It resolves. I love it. Let's get...
I don't like this. This is what I was afraid of. I'm just gonna get Sundering Titan for the rest of the fucking game.
Yeah, but like all of your lands are like the non-basic ones, and, you know.
Oh, wow, this is actually relevant here. Holy shit. I will cast the trap card, Bottomless Trap Hole, which gets around indestructibility. It'll keep Kiki around, but the Darksteel Colossus will be exiled.
In response,
sure,
I'll make a clone.
All right. I don't have to deal with both of them, at least. I can... Even though we get to remove the Colossus, we're still slats for 11, and our draw off the top does not remove the Kiki-Jiki. And as Salt into the Wound, Adam plays out a second Entwined Tooth and Nail the next turn, allowing him to get out Triskelion from the deck, copy it with the Goblin, and machine gun us out to take us to game 3. We got a game on our hands!
We did.
Nothing changes sideboard-wise going into game 3, where we mulligan to 6 on a 1-land hand, but frankly, it could all turn around if we hit a second land. We can then decide to develop the Torrential or the Graceful Charity. While I go unpunished for keeping a 1-lander by drawing the second land for turn, I do get punished eventually for flying a little too close to the sun. Alright, well that's better than having to give you mana for it. We're gonna Underground River. We will pay a life for the blue, and we will play Graceful Charity to draw 3 and discard 2.
In response?
Don't tell me fucking counter spell.
Condescend.
Oh my god. Wait, what's X?
2.
Oh no. All right, gentlemen, we might have a problem.
And I get to strike you.
That might actually be game determinative. So not only do we get absolutely punished for keeping a weak hand in Graceful, in 2 turns we're suddenly facing down Kiki-Jiki and double Darksteel Colossus. I'm about to concede when I'm reminded of 2 things. Only 1 Colossus has haste, and secondly, with my Morph Merchant and this Metamorphosis in my hand, we may yet have an out to the terror of Tooth and Nail.
Well, this one doesn't have haste, so you're not dead just yet?
I mean, it's, sure.
Taking a lot.
Yeah, this is what, 11, 12, 13. You know what? We'll be ballsy and just go to 5. Wait, actually, hold on. I think we actually do have it out in this deck for the shenaniganery. It depends on what I draw here, I'll be honest. If I don't see a land, then I think I actually am just...
The token goes away, and, I mean, you can use that board wipe.
You know what? We might not have to. We're going to play an island. We are going to tap for 4, and we're going to do the thing that this deck is well known for, because more creatures do not actually have a cost. They are cost 0. I will Metamorphosis my face down, no cost creature.
Okay.
It was a magical merchant. We will get out the namesake of this whole strat, not the namesake, but the big thing of the strategy. Thousand Eyes Restrict. Metamorphosis gives the creature haste.
It's a lot of text.
All right, so basically the front part there was literally just for like, because it's a fusion monster. It's a fusion Yu-Gi-Oh, so it's like how to properly cast it. The big thing is that other creatures can attack. I tap him. I basically take a creature and equip it as like an aura that gives it like plus X plus Y, where I'm like gaining your stats basically. So I will attempt to yoink the Darksteel Colossus. Try to stall this out.
Okay.
I am an 11-12. If you have a way to creature removal or bounce, we are like dead 6 ways to Sunday. I will pass to you, buddy. Furthering my suffering, the Thousand Eyes doesn't even help stall for that long as Adam rips a Triskelion off the top. Even with flipping up my face down Torrential Tribute, the Triskelions will still be able to get off their abilities to machine gun my life total down to 1. My position is even more precarious. My pain lands can't tap for colors, I can't safely tap Forbidden Orchard too aggressively without giving Adam an army of spirits. The premature burial in my hand rots unless repeated Mirren activations can pad my life total, and I still have to worry about the reshuffled Darksteel Colossus in his deck. The only cold comfort here is that Adam is top decking and not finding much. I'm able to start somewhat stabilizing between Serpent, Warrior Lady, and a Scapegoat in hand, which are taken away by Oblivion Stone, and a token spared the wrath of the O-Stone almost kills me before my Scapegoat protects me and my precious life total. Cue something like 10 real-world minutes of draw pass, both of us getting flooded, trying to find anything to close out this game. And luckily, I'm the first one to find the gas to get out of this game.
Every land.
Oh, it's something! Alright, so one of the big things in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a lot of stuff like, I wouldn't say necessarily getting past summoning requirements, but funky summoning requirements. And I had a little leeway with Magic because I assumed the Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff I'd have to, the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Pacing, it might be a little slower. But anyway, I can get this big guy out for free by banishing a white and a black creature from my graveyard. So I will exile Thousand Eyes Restrict and DD Warrior Lady to summon Black Luster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. Once per turn, I can choose to exile a creature and he can't attack this turn, or basically if I destroy a creature during combat, I untap and he gets to attack again. Blackluster Soldier finally finds his way onto the board, and as Adam draws for turn, I hold my breath, hoping it's not Triskelion.
Wow.
Is it Triskelion?
Andy, so much.
Oh my god!
With all of this mana.
just like
you got it.
And with that nail-bitingly close Game 3, Go Control takes its first match win over the 2005 competition. Mono Green Aggro.
Actually, you know what? No, I'm going second. Sure, go ahead.
All right.
Let me put back a card.
In this game, I want to keep a rather unimpressive hand, but admittedly knowing that Mono Green can't condescend my graceful charity, I decide to keep the hand and see how the draws play out. Morphing Jar as the draw for turn 2 means we can likely be a little more aggressive to dig for better cards, though admittedly Nate might have kept an even greedier mull to 6, deciding to only keep one forest in the Mono Green deck. You fool. Oh, Nate, your whims will never not surprise me. But now my set Morphing Jar presents an interesting case of, do I flip this or not, since apparently Nate isn't finding any gas, and if I flip this, it could give him some. After an uneventful graceful charity, I do decide to flip the Morphing Jar and draw into arguably the same amount of action, and eventually the game gets to a stage where he develops his deck's strongest creature, a 5/4 with trample that has to bounce back other green creatures, which is quickly solved by arguably GOAT format's strongest creature. We're gonna go green and 4, so green 3 total. We're going to cast Metamorphosis.
What'd that do?
So basically, I trade out a creature I control for a fusion creature from my sideboard with the same mana cost. I'll sacrifice the morph creature, which is 0. I will go grab. And also the creature I put out gets haste. I'll put out Thousand Eyes Restrict.
What'd that do?
I get to basically like suck up one of your guys, and also other creatures can attack.
Oh, great.
So I will tap and go. Delicious. I'll pass. I can't attack now with it.
Wow, great.
Here we go.
Are they?
It's literally the shit from Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know what you want from me.
That's such bullshit.
Being Nate's good friend, I try to offer him some helpful advice in these trying times.
What am I supposed to do?
I don't know, man. Play removal.
Agree.
Yeah, bro. You got fight spells. On an unrelated note, did you know that fight spells didn't come out until Innistrad like 2.5 years after this? Anyway, the game state boils down to Thousand Eyes trying to swing in each turn and getting blocked by some green thing, an elf, a Sakura tribe, something. The game state finally evolves past this when Nate can remove the attacking Thousand Eyes through basically sacking off his entire board to block with a Predator Strike. But it swings right back into my favor with the advantage machine that is Air Knight Parshath. Now, I thought things would last longer, but my set Ring of Destruction had some other plans.
Do what I can do. Play an Elvish Warrior. Pay 3 for a Blanchwood armor. Go ahead.
In your end step. I'm gonna Ring of Destruction.
I can see.
I'm gonna Ring of Destruction your elf. We'll both take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll take 8.
Yeah, and You're you're having such a great time, aren't you? Laughing at my something.
Bro, I'm having a ball. And that explosion of fire and shrapnel leads us right into game 2. Going into sideboarding, I decide to sideboard in the King Tigers to more easily shut down his deck's early pressure and Exiled Force in the event of needing to deal with one very souped up creature. My first hand doesn't have much land, nor the tools to keep up with early aggro, so I mold a 6 and find something semi-playable. 3 lands, a Sangan that can tutor almost any creature that I need, Book of Moon for defense, and Morphing Jar to play emergency draw. The early game is really me taking chip damage from attackers as I try to build up more resources, but then a sudden uppercut suddenly puts me on an even tighter clock.
I have full swing for 3. In response, no blocks.
Sure.
I'll tap 4. For Might of Oaks! Giving the 2/2 +7/7.
Ah! Holy shit!
Take 10?
Yeah, I'll take 10.
Alright!
So now down to 2 life, I'm forced to wait until Nate's next combat to drop Scapegoat so I can make a Metamorphosis into Thousand Eyes play next turn to stave off further attacks. Unfortunately, I'm met with Beacon of Creation making Nate several snakes, meaning I'm most definitely dead if Nate can find a way to remove the Thousand Eyes. We're now stuck in something of a stalemate, Nate trying to find more beacons to add to the snake army, looping Eternal Witness to get back Sakura tribes, but with no way to remove the Thousand Eyes, it's an immovable object versus unstoppable force scenario. So I realize there might be a little bit of a problem because the beacons just shuffle themselves back into your deck.
Yeah, they do.
That might be a problem. And more unfortunately, with this realization, it dawns on me that I can't win through mill. So my only out is to put up a giant board of my own and hope I can find my deck's literal single answer to this slithering swarm. And much like versus Tooth and Nail, it comes down to waiting it out to finally find my answer. If I knew the game was gonna go like this, I think my win con would genuinely be like trying to like wait till you would only have the beacons in hand and then Morphing Jar to make you mill. But I couldn't even do that. I think because I think
go ahead.
Yeah.
I think they immediately go back into my.
Oh, thank God.
What'd you grab?
The boy.
Did you get it before I grabbed my removal spell?
We got the boy.
What is it?
Tribe
Oh,
infecting.
great. Okay.
Well, I'm gonna try and tone down some of this. We're gonna go Tribe infecting, discard Sinister Serpent, naming Snake.
No. Okay.
Oh, right. Sorry, they're insects, not snakes.
You said snake.
You know, that's fair. I did. But once we finally get our hands on Tribe Infecting Virus, it's a hop, skip, and a jump to lethal. With the 2-0 victory, Goat Control takes its second match win over the competition. But can YuGiOh make the three-peat? Bluetooth. I have brought in my good friend Jonah. You know him as CapCrow. You know him also the co-author of the great song Beldegore. And I brought him on board to help test the Goat to Magic conversion. Hopefully you will have a better enjoyment of some of these Yu-Gi-Oh references. I know Adam was a little less unfamiliar with Yu-Gi-Oh, but I know you will understand what Pot of Greed does to a more intimate extent.
Fortunately, I've played a lot of Goat format, and I have a passing familiarity with the Kamigawa box specifically for some reason.
Why Kamigawa specifically?
Because I was doing a bunch of research into the history of different Magic formats, and this format specifically is famous for how just awful it is.
Jonah's feelings for Kamigawa are definitely a little more biased than mine, but hopefully it won't impact the game too much. My opening grip for game 1 feels a little suspect, especially mulling down to 5, but it's fine. He has to mull to 5 too. And this third hand definitely feels promising with Merchant to help find cards, Parshat to slam as a threat by emerging by turn 3 potentially, and Scapegoat is always nice to have. The game goes to a definite grind with Jonah having to Vidalcan Shackles the Merchant just to put a semblance of a clock on me, and unfortunately I don't see much in terms of usable cards after my 4th land. Even my 4th set back row doesn't do much to help my situation, but does draw Jonah's ire just a little bit. Untap, upkeep, draw cardo. You know what? That might be irrelevant. We're gonna pay 2, and you know what? We're just gonna fill up the back row here. We're gonna set 2 more cards. I'm gonna go pass. oh no, the counterspell player is moaning. Oh no.
Well, dude, when you have 4 cards that you can activate at any time in the back row.
yeah. Vintage has it. It's called Force of Will.
You know what's not in this format, Josh? You know what I'd love to be able to play? You know what the best counterspell in this block is? Mana Leak. You know what the second one is? Condescend. Is there a good Condescend, Josh? Oh, geez. Anyway, we're just gonna...
It'd have been about to be condescending you. And bad news for me, I can't find a dinky dude to stem the bleeding. The warrior lady I draw later is blocked from coming onto the board due to a lack of white sources, and an uneventful game 1 ends in Goat's defeat. Going into game 2, I make some sizable changes for the deck to have an edge into this control mirror. Dust Shoots to help remove Haymaker creatures Jonah might have, Blade Knight and Exarion to have some beefier creatures to help close the game. My first hand of game 2 opens with Serpent, Pot of Greed, and Parshat to tribute over for later. This feels like a much better start. And getting Magician of Faith on turn 3 to potentially recur that Pot of Greed offered the type of value you could only find at a fast food restaurant. But of course, said greed never goes unpunished. Alright, untap, upkeep, draw. That's pretty good. We're gonna Underground River. We will pay... Actually, before that, we're gonna combat, swim with the Serpent for 1.
We'll take 1.
We'll go second May. We will pay 3 and morph a creature, and we'll pass.
This might be wrong, but I will condescend the more.
You know what? I don't think you're wrong there. Yeah, so was that unless I pay 1, which I can't. It was Magician of Faith.
Oh,
yeah, no. My poker face dog is really bad there. I was like, you know what's the biggie?
Oh no.
Here you go.
It was like, okay, there's like 3 things that could just absolutely fuck me, and all of them are
that's insane actually. Holy hell. While getting 2 greedy jars wasn't on the menu, Parshath, however, was, and much like in Yu-Gi-Oh's GOAT format, he's just as good of a control finisher with the card advantage. With Jonah unable to produce an answer and some extra board presence, GOAT is able to claw back into a game 3. I don't make any extra sideboard changes, but the opener for game 3 ends up being, well, keepable, justified by the Sangan, the Premature Burial, and the Sakuretsu armor in hand. The uncastable Blade Knight could get brought out theoretically by being discarded and revived later, or just coping that I'll draw a white source. But ultimately, it's probably a decent hand going into the control matchup. Jonah playing an early Kaijin of the Vanishing Touch shut down any aggro the deck could muster. Yeah, I've never heard of that card either before this game. And getting Sangan friggin' Mana Leaked shoves me into a very awkward position. I will ask very nicely that you don't counter the spell, sir. This is a nice little Sangan.
Sangan? I will, in fact.
No, he's just a boy.
Needs to go to the graveyard.
I'll pass. And it doesn't help that after such a heinous crime, he's gathering Urza lands together. But it's fine. I find a way to punish him with a handy hand rip of my own. Whoa, hold on. You're not supposed to see
Whoa.
Set a card and pass.
Draw.
No, hold on there, buddy. You have 4 cards in your hand. I'm gonna trap Dust Shoot you.
Oh, you son of a bitch. Oh no. Okay, fine. We can keep the grip. one counter spell. We put back another of the Kaijins. All right, I'm down for this. All right, so we have to play around just 1 Condescend. Got it. Yeah, what was that? 2 mana to fucking Thoughtseize me?
Bro, Thoughtseize costs 1. Duress costs 1. What are you on about? And after our completely valid discussion over how much a hand rip spell should cost, I find myself forced to bait out the only counterspell in hand by trying to revive my Sangan, which surprisingly to me is allowed to resolve, and also surprisingly a Graceful Charity on the next turn gets to resolve as well, and the drawn Exarion universe also gets to resolve. I swear Jonah's not a paid actor, but admittedly it makes sense that he doesn't want to burn his only interaction on something he might get punished for later. As it sounds like this 1 Condescend I saw in his hand has been his only source of interaction he's been able to hold on to. But it takes him casting Memnarch, his deck's linchpin, and me realizing a very goofy interaction to finally get that counterspell out of him.
Huh.
What you got there, buddy?
Yeah.
The 4th power plant?
It's an island. It's also Memnarch.
Ah, that's spooky. All right, I don't like that.
Any what say you?
I don't got a response, buddy. You can have that.
Go good.
Wait, actually, I can instant your end step. This is fucked up, actually. I'm gonna flip Dust Tornado and destroy target artifact or enchantment. I'm gonna blow up Memnarch. All right, my go. And on the next turn, we can easily slide in Tribe Infecting Virus to finish what the Dust Tornado started, and by the grace of Richard Garfield himself, we fade a few more draw steps to connect for lethal damage. That better be the top deck of your life.
No, you got it.
All right. Woo!
Very cool.
Yeah, crazy.
Love that.
And with that impressive 2-1 match win, Goat topples the Machine Empire to make it a 3-0 record. But with more aggro decks on the horizon, how well can we handle them? Red deck wins. After the surprising win against Bluetooth Control and Razortron, we now have Adam back again, this time on Red Deck Wins, because every good format needs a cheap aggro deck you can just put together for pocket change and throw into a tournament.
Yeah, and historically, as long as that red deck is not the best deck in the format, then it's a decent standard one. We will see if tonight this can beat the king of the Yu-Gi-Oh decks.
My hunch going into this from design was, we'd have Teeth against Control, but like aggros where we're going to be really struggling against, just because this is a control deck, so I don't really have that many sweepers in this, so we're gonna see if Magic can finally take a notch into the plays. Going into game 1 versus another aggro deck, I keep a 3-lander with Serpent. Admittedly, I don't like that one of my lands gives the aggro deck more bodies, but I reason that Serpent can handle it for the time being. Sakuretsu eats an attacker, and theoretically, Mirren can get us back some life. I discount 2 things, however. 1, Red Deck Wins gets to play Chrome Mox during this time to make more impactful early plays, and 2, Volshock Sorcerer gets to be put on Serpent Stomping duty. It's not going to face, but it is clearing the board of blockers to stop getting my teeth punched out. And I'm stuck on this back foot for a little bit until I find Tribe Infecting Virus, and I realize this with some errant cards in my hand is going to be the win condition. It takes a bit of time to get there, but eventually Tribe Infecting does get to make his introductions to Adam. Alright, well I think we've found a answer for all this. It's an expensive answer, but we're gonna get there. Serp will come back to hand. We'll go tap 4 for Tribe Infecting Virus, and this might just turn to a -4 to just like have to wipe out the whole board. We'll go Infecting Virus, discarding Serpent, calling Spirit to go to the tokens. We'll go
And the Frost. I guess.
That's funny.
We'll deal 1 damage to your creature.
All right. Got it. We'll go do it again, calling Beast to go to the Arcslogger. And I think from my hand here, we probably dump the Suki. Yeah, we'll destroy all beefs in play, and then we'll do it one more time to go to the Volshock Sorcerer, discarding Tsukiyomi. And we'll pass. Never mind, we do have a board sweeper. It just costs 4 cards.
I mean, that's actually really good.
Losing 4 cards to clear the board, okay, I guess, well, technically 3 since Serpent will come back to hand, sucks a little bit, but Tribe Infecting does get to preserve our life total by taking a shock, and Serpent gets to come down the next turn to play blocker. The board soon becomes the both of us staring each other down until Genju of the Spires turns one of Adam's mountains into a 6-1 swinger. The only reason I wasn't dead on the spot was because of the scapegoat in my hand, but I do find a very weird way to neutralize it. Alright, this is kind of a little funny interaction, I think, because I don't know how it would work. Okay, ruling question. If a creature
it would exile and then it would not come back.
No. So no, weirder ruling question. If you flip a creature face down, it still keeps its enchantments, right?
Believe so.
Okay, so I guess I don't know. I guess it'd be layers, right? Because like if you flip it with like Cyberman conversion, would it still be a 2/2?
Yeah, well, if it's face down, then it's no longer a mountain, and the enchantment would fall off.
Okay, then here's the funniest out. We're gonna go for 4. We will play Tsukiyomi. When he enters, I get to turn a creature without more face down. It gains more 4. We'll turn the mountain into a 2/2.
All right.
After this Gigabrain play, neither of us find that much more to work with, but unfortunately Adam's bricks are just brickier than mine. So he scoops soon afterwards and we go to game 2. Going into game 2, I side in the King Tigers to help mitigate the pressure that Adam can push onto the board, and trap Dust Shoot so I can keep him off his impactful creatures. The game 2 opener is a little land heavy, but the non-lands are killers in this matchup. Mirror Force negates a big push, Magical Merchant can help find more cards, King Tiger shuts down his smaller creatures, and Snatch Shield takes anything that gets out of hand. Unfortunately, I do have to use the Mirror Force early on a growing slit to preserve some life, and even have to use the newly introduced King Tiger to chump block a hit. But thankfully, I do have another way to steal this victory from the jaws of potential defeat. Yeah, alright, that's a little goofy. You have my coast. We'll go green, blue, and 1 for Snatch Steal. I will attempt to activate its ability to pay 2 and steal Wong2. Or not Wong2, sorry, the Arcslogger.
Yeah, that's... Yeah... Can I just respond by decking myself?
I mean, if you want to. And surprisingly, even with this first slogger getting rid of mostly lands, Adam hands me the win, revealing his hand had little gas to keep up. With another surprisingly swift victory under our belts, Goat's dominance over the 05 metagame grows ever closer to completion. Will either of our final 2 challengers have some teeth against this reigning champion? White Weenie! And now we're going up against my buddy Nate. He's going to be on White Weenie and has chosen the path of not reading anything?
Yes, I have chosen the chaos path.
Could I ask why?
Because for funny moment content, Josh.
You know, I guess. Sure. Going into this first game versus White Weenie, I have to mull to 6 because this first hand has no viable action. And the mull to 6 is just as helpful, if not less, honestly. The hand is really only saved by having some lands, the theoretical play later on with Premature Burial if I discard Parshath, and Snatch Steal. And Snatch Steal is going to have to put in some real heavy lifting here if you want to get anywhere. And it's not helped that Nate gets a pretty fast start with Ishamaru, Jite, and some other loads of the ground creatures. Even with Snatch Steal though, it's not putting that much of a clock on him, but I do get to pull off a very sneaky tribute play utilizing the Parshath in my hand. I'm going to do what they would do in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm going to use your Ishamaru to tribute summon. We're going to do the emerge cost. So for a blue and 2 colorless, and Ishamaru fulfilling the white, we are going to summon Air Knight Parshath.
What the heck?
Ah! Bro, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yep, just nice little 5/4 trample whenever he deals damage to draw a card.
Josh, you need to balance these cards better. Yu-Gi-Oh! Does not need to exist in Magic, and we are here to prove it. You said you won 3 games already with these cards?
I'll pass.
I bet you will.
Parshath is admittedly pretty strong for 2005 era Magic, as we have seen, but it helps that as he tries to get his flyer in with Jite, the Book of Moon in my hand lets me bring it down to Earth to prevent the counter game.
Josh, these cards really are stupid. What the heck? Okay.
Hey, in your own defense, you chose to not read anything before going into this.
It doesn't matter if I read anything.
Yes, it does. You can try to play around it. After we argue about Nate's lack of being hooked on Phonics, I use the freed up Snatch Steal to take his Conda, giving my team a much needed blocking benefit. While Parshath bites the dust, he's quickly back into the fray with the help of Premature Burial. Nate doesn't like this too much.
You know what this experience has taught me already, Josh?
What has it taught you, buddy?
I really do hate Yu-Gi-Oh!
Eventually, the game grinds to me using Parshath to try and outpace the life gain Nate is getting through keeping the Snatch Stolen Conda. And this unfortunately takes a minute because by the time I can start swinging, Nate's comfortably at 30-something life, which gives us a lot of opportunities for some great commentary.
Game is going to end in 30 turns.
Trying.
You?
Bro, I'm just trying.
You just enjoy my suffering.
I'm just drawing land right now.
If you don't concur at the end of this series that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is unbalanced compared to Magic, I think you just pay off by Konami.
Bro, I wish I was paid off by Konami. But finally, after something like 25 minutes of real-world time, we finally get through the massive life total we gave Nate and get a win. Going into game 2, I add in the King Tiger since it looks like a majority of White Weenie's creatures are low-powered, and again, throw in Trap Dust Shoot to make sure we deny Nate his creatures. In the first 7, we find another 1-land opener. Clearly, the mana base issue is finally catching up to me. I mold down to a 3-lander featuring Sangan, Morphing Jar, and Sakuretsu armor. Nate immediately puts me on a clock with the Lantern Kami in the air, and I find myself on the back foot. Though by turn 4, Nate gets some real gas turned up with Day of Destiny. Now this King Tiger in my hand doesn't do much since it won't kill any legendaries on cast due to this pump. I tap down my board to set up some sort of defense, and unfortunately, run into one of the main issues I was terrified of when setting up this challenge: losing my land access.
I shall play a Plains. I shall swing for 4.
I will move to block Misako with Sinister Serpent.
Okay.
Serpent dies, I'll take 1.
Alright, I'll tap 4.
Oh, don't
I'll
be
play
Hirobi.
Hokari!
I might just be dead. Hokori comes down at the worst possible moment. I lose mana to flip my Morph, I don't have the access to drop Scapegoat as a defense, and my grip otherwise isn't helping me against Nate's Onslaught. Scapegoat buys me a single turn, but having to tap out all my mana and not having a guaranteed answer for 1 mana means Nate takes game 2. Game 3 has me bring an Exiled Force for spot removal and really more Hokori removal, and the opener presents me with an interesting decision. Double Dust Shoot to keep Nate off any Hokoris, 3 lands, Snatch Shield to yoink something, and Parshat to tribute over the thing I stole. I figure the hand knowledge is worth enough to keep this and decide to go for it, which really helps once I get a look at his near opening grip.
You didn't see this.
It's okay. I'm about to take once that entire hand.
Huh?
After you draw for turn,
Okay, after I draw for turn, okay.
I'm gonna flip Trap Dust Shoot.
What'd that do?
I look at your hand and shuffle a creature back.
Oh boy. Okay. Oh.
Hand of Honor, Jite, Masako. 2 Hokoris. Get him out of here.
Double Hokori is a massive pain, but man is it good that we kept the hand with 2 Dust Shoots. I get out Snatch Steal early to make use of mana and rip out the second Hokori a turn or so later after I Snatch Steal his Hand of Honor. We also learn that his hand doesn't have much action to it. Double Jite, Shining Shoal, and another Hand of Honor. We do the tribute play again to get out Parshat, take his counter with Snatch Steal, and start threatening with the massive advantage engine. Eventually, Nate finds his 4th land, Parshat gets traded away, and the decision becomes when to flip Morphing Jar a few turns later to refill the hand. Luckily, I don't have to consider flipping the jar for too long. With the tiger off the top, we find 2 tilts. The game tilting into our favor, and Nate getting tilted for not having an answer to the tiger.
We'll go take 1 for the green for this, then 4 total. We'll play out King Tiger Wongu. Whenever a creature with power 3 or less enters battlefield, if it was cast in the hand, destroy it.
Huh?
I mean,
Oh, wow!
Thankfully, with no more days of destiny to pump creatures, King Tiger helps close out the game, making a 2-1 versus White Weenie, and now making a clean 5-0 into the Magic competition. It all comes down to the match versus Gifts Ungiven. Can Goat make it to the finish line unscathed?
Gifts Ungiven.
I don't know if I want to call this like the ramshackle of Goat deck, but obviously with a 5-0 record so far, it has proven itself against the metagame of 05. We have Jonah back here again playing the Gifts Ungiven deck that won, I believe it was GP Mexico in 05. How you feeling about it, buddy?
I think out of all of the other decks, a reanimator type list might be the closest thing that could be something as powerful as the Goat deck.
I never thought I'd hear as powerful as the Goat deck.
I mean,
Yeah.
as we've demonstrated, the Goat deck is pretty strong compared to the rest of the board at run this time.
You know, you're
So
not.
I'll be
you're not
interested to
entirely
see how
wrong.
this goes.
To start game 1 of the Gifts Ungiven match, for the first time so far in this experiment, the original Magic deck actually gets to decide whether to go first or second, and Jonah decides to go first and keep his 7. Meanwhile, I'm floundering with getting 2 hands back to back with 1 land apiece. The 3rd land finally gives me something potentially: Morphing Jar, Pot of Greed, Delinquent Duo, and some lands. The hand is playable, but definitely not ideal since most of my interaction discards to Jonah's graveyard, which could be inadvertently giving his deck fuel. Ultimately, the Morphing Jar gets mulled away, and I'm relying solely on Pot of Greed to find some advantage here. Though even with using Sensei's top to find draws, neither of us are really finding that much until Jonah can slam a Kagamaru. While I really should have used the Book of Moon here, I opt for Tsukiyomi to force him to spend mana on the next turn to morph it back up. I'm brought down to 8 before I can wipe out his attackers with Mirror Force, and I'm not finding much to work with. Further not helped by an Ink Eyes being ninjutsu'd in, bringing me down to 3. So to just try and stay in the game, I have to make a very desperate play with Tsukiyomi.
We're gonna Tsukiyomi, and then I'm gonna target himself, so he'll flip into a morph.
That is fine.
Well, I'm kind of like winging this anyway. We're gonna go green, blue, and 2. I'm gonna Metamorphosis my 0 CMC creature.
Does it tribute for cost? It does.
Yes, has additional cost to play it.
Interesting. So you're going for something with 0 CMC?
Yes.
Huh. I suppose that's fine.
All right, we're grabbing Thousand Eyes.
Why is it not a little one?
Because the idea was you need to be able to sack goat tokens, and tokens in Magic are 0 CMC.
Okay.
So I want to keep that interaction in there. So Thousand Eyes just enters, nothing. I guess like starts a chain, but that's Yu-Gi-Oh. I guess I'm hinging on you not having a black card for Sickening Shoal, but I'll attempt to use Thousand Eyes. Getting haste from Metamorphosis, tap him. I'm gonna suck up the Ink Eyes, or attempt to. But I'm pretty sure if you have the Sickening Shoal here, I just lose.
Okay, see, I do in fact have second control.
All right, what do you got to excel for it? That's
Yep.
Yeah, game 2.
And unfortunately, this desperation move does not work out as Jonah clears the Thousand Eyes with Sickening Shoal and swings for lethal. Going into game 2, I think I have the most sideboarding in this one session that I've done this entire experiment. Trap Dust Shoots to keep him off creatures, Brain Control to be able to take one of his larger threats and use it against him, Cyberjar to help draw without letting Jonah fill his graveyard, and the Chaos Sorcerers to exile his creatures while giving me hopefully something big to run out for cheap. Our opening 7 for game 2 is now 2 land heavy, and the remaining cards don't offer much action. The second hand is now the opposite direction of being 2 land light, but ultimately I decide that I can't risk going down to 5. The Trap Dust Shoot in hand is way too important, and I reason that the matchup is probably slow enough that I can definitely survive for a few turns if absolutely needed. I'm not overtly punished since I draw a land on my first turn, and so we get to hit him with the Dust Shoot.
Alright. Draw.
Hold on. After you draw, I have a response.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna Trap Dust Shoot.
Shit.
The hand does not give me a lot of clear options for what to shuffle back. Kagamaru can be fuel for Sickening Shoal for removal, Goryo's offer some defense against discard, and Moloku can start making a board. Ultimately, I decide to shuffle back Kagamaru to 1. Prevent a big beater from coming down. Now Jonah's options to make a board are bouncing his lands back with Moloku to make illusions, and then if his creatures go away, he's back to square 1 with no lands in play. 2. He doesn't have nearly as much fuel to remove with the Shoal, and if he does, that means he'll have to give up his recursion in the form of Goryo's to cast the Shoal for free. Thankfully, seeing the Tribe Elders in hand and seeing minimal lands in general means I actually might have some time to muster up a defense. Unfortunately for me though, he starts looping Tribe Elders and I'm not really finding much action in my deck, nor is he really giving me anything that I can effectively snatch steal. Until finally, he brings Moloku onto the board, which forces the trigger for him to bounce back several lands to make an illusion army before I can steal the Moloku for myself. The game goes back to a grind of me eventually clearing through his illusion army and trying to make an illusion army of my own to hold back Jonah's board. Until he brings down another Moloku. But with just 1 goat token left and Metamorphosis in hand, I go for the play to make this game grind for even longer and to mitigate his attackers.
We'll go Island. We'll get green with this. Actually, no. Get green with the Orchard. Give you a Spirits. We're gonna Metamorphosis away the goat token that I have left.
Sure.
Token dies, we'll get Thousand Eyes. Thousand Eyes will enter with haste from Metamorphosis. I will Thousand Eyes try to steal your Moloku.
That is... There, turns that into an enchantment, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's fine.
Cool.
In between Thousand Eyes and a soon-to-be placed Chaos Sorcerer, the game slows to a glacial pace. Like the unsped footage is almost 30 minutes glacial pace. I finally push for a value play with Cyberjar, finding 2 Parshats, Graceful, and some lands, but it importantly gives Jonah the Gifts Ungiven. The Graceful on my turn finds a Dust Shoot, immediately saving the potential gaff, and definitely screws up Jonah's Gifts play that he executes on my end step.
And then I guess we'll go Chaos Sork, banish or exile the Myojin.
Okay.
And I'll say go.
In the end phase, I will Gifts Ungiven.
Sounds good.
Let's see here. Okay. Let's think. Go. You, and you.
Alright, that's a little quirky. Getting back with Goryo's at this point, just like Moloku, but then it dies. Can you attack with it? You'd have to get back Kagamaru. You can take the Hanakami and the Divining Top, and the rest will go to the yard. And I'll pass the turn. And then after you draw, I'm gonna Dust Shoot.
Yeah. Alright. I think I gotta give this one to you. Because it's a...
Combined with getting the creature ripped and real-life responsibilities coming up, Jonah hands me this extremely grindy game 2, and we start prepping for game 3. No added sideboard changes, and the first 7 is finally something playable for a change. Serpent and Graceful in the opener is just a nice combo to have, but the draws don't really give me much to work with, mostly lands and a Warrior Lady. However, Jonah's not getting much action either, so ideally we can start pressing an offensive with the most sinister of Serpents and the Warrior Lady.
This is probably sore.
Like the game?
I'm not
I'll
giving
take
you
the game.
I'm not giving you the game. Get out of here, you buzz. I'm putting out DD Warrior Lady.
Oof. Yep.
Your go, Yug. Hey, Yug, I'm putting out the DD Warrior Lady.
Dude, god damn, a 4 for a 3/4 that can exile shit?
Yeah, bro, it's just like from YuGiOh. It's level 4.
Crazy.
Like, Warrior Lady YuGiOh was like really good for the time, too. Like, let's be real here.
True. Damn, I mean, that thing could be like a 2/2 and it'd still be crazy.
The Nezumi Grave Robber that comes down presents some complications. Really, the front side is more annoying than the back because it gets to strip my graveyard out of resources I can recover later. Honestly, outside of a handful of creatures, I'm not stressing too much about getting my monsters grave robbed. However, it's with a misunderstanding of how things will work out that I make, in hindsight, a confusing and potentially match-punting play.
Yo. Oh, wait, this is gonna be crazy. Hold up. I had a spicy maneuver here.
Yeah.
We're gonna go... It's gonna be, unfortunately, be a good chunk of life, but it's probably worth, actually. We're gonna go play the Llanowar Wastes.
Okay.
We're gonna go paying 2 life for the red and for the blue and the black. I would like to brain con your Nezumi Grave Robber.
Oh. I will pay 2 to exile Graceful Charity.
All right.
The misplay here being that I thought I could transform the Grave Robber and then start picking away at Jonah's graveyard. This misplay doesn't seem that bad in the moment, but in a control mirror style matchup, you want to minimize the amount of resources you waste so you can outvalue your opponent over time. The additional life loss from brain control doesn't help either. Eventually we stabilize with Thousand Eyes, but run into another weakness of the list, and a general weakness any limited player knows way too well. Really good flyers.
Well, Josh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that deck has like a million different ways to do non-dispersion removal, so I fairly hope that you have a plan for this.
Whew. That's concerning. Well, thank God he can't attack.
Yeah, that is true.
That's I don't like that.
Kakusho threatens me about 6 ways to Sunday here. Not only is one hit good enough to end my life, but the death trigger does it too. And having a way to remove Thousand Eyes continues to compound my increasingly awful situation. Thankfully, using Mirror to sack off Thousand Eyes before it dies gives us a little bit of breathing room as we remove the Kakusho with Mirror Force. We're down to 3, but we're not out.
Alright, Josh. Now the real question is, what do you do about the second one?
Oh my God. Oh, that's annoying. That's really fucking annoying. I was like, oh God, please don't tell me he's got more in there.
Okay, now we might be. We can soak up some blockers and use Mirrored on Sinister Serpent to get a little bit of life and hope our next draw gets us somewhere. Ring of Destruction really doesn't help us here, but we can squeeze out one more turn by blocking and sacking Warrior Lady to Mirren.
Add to hand one time. Nope. Nope. Yeah, you got it.
And with the land off the top, the combination of flyers and the massive misplay earlier seals our fate. If I had retained the brain control, and depending on if I could have waited that long dealing with the Grave Robber's flipped form, I could have instead waited for Kakusho to come down, taken it, and then metamorphosed it away for an impactful 6 cost like Ryusenshi or Dark Balter. The gifts of victory really were ungiven from GOAT, ending our run in a 5-1 record. Huh. Well, I'd be lying if I said I thought our record was going to look like crap, but genuinely, I wouldn't have put GOAT on decimating almost the entire competition. If you'd be interested in seeing a full dive of my thoughts on every card of this conversion, as well as seeing the raw footage for all the matches, let me know in the comments. But at the end here, of a video with an ever-increasing runtime, I'll touch on a few key findings. The biggest factor was easily the trap cards. Free casting after foretelling is still insane, and I need to go hit past Josh for assuming that they'd only be usable if the initial cost to set was free as well. I'd have to play more games and run more playtests, but I feel justified in saying that a lot of the reasons we had teeth in these games was because of the insane power of the foretell cards. I would easily concede that they probably needed some actual mana costs instead of just being free after foretelling. Torrential Tribute, Dust Shoot, Ring of Destruction, Book of Moon being the main offenders in my eyes. And speaking of Book, yeah, I'm sorry, the card's nuts. It's cheaper Cyberman conversion that can also be cast for free. Book saved me more than a handful of times, and it's extremely solid deterrent and removal for the time period I dropped it into. Air Knight Parshath was exceptionally better in play than I thought it would be, and I think this extends to a more overall concept with the converted cards. I used modern card design sensibilities to make these. Jonah touched on this when talking about Warrior Lady, where it could probably have been a 2/2 for 4 and still see play. But I converted it from the YuGiOh stats and with the overall more current day design goals, rather than trying to neatly transplant it into the 05 ecosystem. Hell, I'd argue with the general power level, GOAT probably would have won against Gifts Ungiven if it actually had any flyers. I mean, Adam and Nate argued that these would probably have some teeth into current day modern decks. In conclusion, a good chunk of these cards I think were fine, but definitely a few outliers and concepts needed some modifying to better sit at the power level of the time period. With that, we finally reached the end. If you've stuck around this long, you have my gratitude. I only ask that you share this around and show other people this crazy Yu-Gi-Oh! To Magic experiment. Big thanks to my friends Jonah, Nate, and Adam for taking the time to playtest these with me. Jonah and Nate have some online presence. Jonah does some game dev stuff as CapCrow, and Nate has some music he works on Toxicutter Music. I'll link their stuff in the description. And of course, I'd be remiss to not mention the audio and music stylings of Caleb, whose CapMuse stuff you can find down in the description as well. And not only can you find all of their stuff, you can find a link to the full gallery of the converted cards, along with my respective stuff, my TCG Player store, and my Alter Sleeves affiliate link. So like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time for more cardboard-related content. But until then, remember to always hold up mana for the condescend.